In the last lesson, our application failed to run successfully because it couldn't find the Ogre libraries necessary at runtime. To fix this, we'll just copy the necessary files over from the SDK folder to our project folder. So just to recap, whenever we started our app, it told us that it couldn't find the ogre main_d.dll file. This _d, by the way, refers to the fact that we're working in debug mode right now, and we're working with a debug version of the ogre main library. Let's click on OK, and let's go ahead and copy that particular file from the SDK folder to the project folder here. We'll bring up the SDK folder. There it is. And I'll also bring up the project folder here, which is the basic app folder. Now let's go in and find that DLL file. It should be inside of the bin folder here. And since we're working in debug mode, it should be in the debug folder. And there it is, ogre main_d.dll. So that's the file that we need, and we could copy this file over here, but there may be other DLL files that we may need, and also the config files here that are necessary. So instead of just trying to just to make things simple, and instead of copying one of these over and over again till we find what we need, what we'll do is we'll just copy the whole debug folder. In fact, just to eliminate two steps, we'll copy both the debug and the release folder here by just copying the bin folder down there. So let's do that by right-clicking and dragging and dropping the bin folder to the basic app project directory. Let's release it here, and in the right-click context menu, let's just do copy here. So I'll copy the bin folder in there, which is what we want. Now let's go ahead and run this and see where it takes us. Let's start it up, click on the play button, and it's still giving us an error. The reason why it's giving us an error is because if we take a look at this, the executable file is being made here in the debug folder, where we want it to actually get made in the bin debug folder where the necessary files are, where the DLL files are. So let's go ahead and fix this by tweaking some of the project settings. Let's go back to the project property page, right click basic app, go to properties, we'll go to linker general and change the output file. Instead of putting it in the debug folder, which is where the executable file is going now, we'll go ahead and tweak it so that we can put it inside of the bin debug folder instead. Let's just copy this link in the address bar here, copy it over, Control C, and we'll just directly specify the file in an absolute manner. So let's replace the first few lines, the first few characters here, press Control V to paste over those, and then put the slash in there. So now it's going to go in ogre XSI basic app bin debug basic app.exe is the file that we're going to make. Let's click OK and try running it now. Now it's going to ask us if we want to build that. That's because we specified a new location. Let's click yes. And now we're getting another error, but if you take a look at this, you can see this is the error that we've coded inside of the catch over here. I'll just move to the side here so we can take a good look at the code that we just wrote. So it's saying an exception has occurred. That's what we have written here, up here, and it's made a dialog box that only has the OK button. It's got the icon error as well. So we can see that the code that we have written has worked. We can see the fruits of our labor here. Click on continue after clicking on OK. So why is that error happening? Well, the reason why it's happening is because it still cannot find the particular files, and the reason is because even though we're making the basic app.exe here, the project's debug mode is still set to this folder. So let's go ahead and change it from this folder back to the bin debug folder. Let's do that by going to the basic app, right click, go to the properties, go to the configuration properties debugging section. We need to change the working directory. So let's go in here and type ./bin/debug. So instead of trying to put it in the debug folder, it's going to go ahead and start working with it from the bin debug folder instead. Let's click on apply, OK, and now let's run this. Now we're getting another error, but this error is saying that it cannot find this particular file. And this ogrecore.zip file contains a bunch of resources that are necessary for the example application to work. So right now everything is actually good to go. We just need to make sure that we copy the necessary media files over from the SDK folder to the project folder. Let's click on OK, click on continue, and it should stop there. Good. Let's go back to the Ogre SDK folder. Let's bring back our project folder here. Let's go back to the project folder in here. You can see the Ogre logs all come out. You can actually read this and get some pretty good information out of it. Really good for error checking and stuff like that. But now let's go in and copy the resources. The resources are all in the media folder. We've got models, materials. Inside of the materials we have shaders, particle descriptions. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here. Let's copy the media files over so we can make sure that the example application runs with no problem at all. Just as we did before, right click, drag and drop the media folder over to our basic app project directory and just copy it here. It's going to copy all those files over, refresh. Let's go back to our basic app here and run it. And there we go. Now we can see the opening window to our Ogre application. It's running right now. We just need to select a rendering subsystem. I'm going to start working actually with the OpenGL rendering subsystem. Let's select it. Now there are a few things we need to change before we go. The first and most important one is, since we're working in debug mode and testing this out, we want to change it from full screen yes to full screen no. Otherwise, if there's an error and we're running in full screen, it's going to be really bad news. I'm going to go ahead and change the video mode from 1024 by 768 to 640 by 480, so we just have a smaller window to work with that can fit in the recording area. Let's click on OK, and there we go. We can now see our Ogre render window is running, and we've successfully got it to work on here. It's empty right now. So in the next lesson, we'll go in and add our XSI model in here. So here's what we have so far. We've gone in and we had to copy a bunch of files. We had to copy our media files, our bin files to get things working. So don't forget, anytime you start your Ogre applications, you need to do all of these steps to get it to this level. From this point on, we can start working with our own stuff. And like I said, in the next lesson, we'll add our XSI model in here.